Did you know that over 70% of Australian tech startups fail within their first 3 years? That's one of the highest failure rates in the developed world. Not long ago, Australia was being hyped as the next Silicon Valley of the Southern Hemisphere. Bold dreams, billion-dollar valuations, and politicians promising a tech-driven future. But today, the empire is crumbling. So, what happened? Why did Australia, with all its talent, resources, and ambition, fall behind in the global tech race? Was it poor leadership, a lack of vision, or something even deeper that most people never saw coming? In this video, we're diving into the 10 shocking reasons why Australia's tech empire is collapsing, and why this fall is a massive warning sign, not just for Aussies, but for tech scenes around the world. Stick around because the truth is more brutal than you think, and almost no one is talking about it. Number 1. The Australian tech dream. Just a few years ago, Australia was buzzing with tech optimism. Headlines were filled with stories about billion-dollar startups, government-backed innovation hubs, and a future powered by AI, fintech, and clean tech. Global investors were paying attention. The country produced unicorns like Atlassian, and startups like Canva became household names worldwide. There was a real sense that Australia was on the verge of becoming a global tech powerhouse. Politicians promised a smart nation. Universities were pushing out skilled graduates. Even the media celebrated a new wave of entrepreneurs ready to change the world. But behind the flashy headlines, the foundations were weak. For every success story, dozens of startups quietly died, starved of funding, talent, or government support. The innovation ecosystem that looked strong on the surface was cracked underneath. And as the world moved faster, embracing digital transformation, AI, and automation, Australia began to fall behind. Today, many insiders admit the dream is fading. A growing number of startups are moving offshore. Tech leaders are warning about a shrinking talent pool, and the government, still caught in the slow machinery of red tape. The question is no longer when Australia will lead the tech world, but whether it ever will. So what caused this collapse? In the next sections, we'll break down the 10 core reasons behind the fall of Australia's tech empire. Some are economic, some are political, others downright shocking. But together, they paint a picture of missed opportunities, broken systems, and dreams deferred. Let's start with one of the biggest reasons, and it has nothing to do with technology at all. Number 2. Over-reliance on real estate. Here's a harsh truth. Australia's economy has always leaned more on property than progress. While other countries built their tech futures on innovation, research, and bold risks, Australia placed its bets on something far more familiar: real estate. For decades, owning property has been seen as the safest and smartest way to build wealth, and it worked for a while. But the problem? That mindset bled into the investment world. Instead of funding startups and future technologies, capital kept flowing into housing, construction, and mining. Innovation became an afterthought. Even during Australia's tech boom, most investors stayed cautious, choosing physical assets over risky new ventures. Startups found it incredibly difficult to attract the kind of early-stage funding that Silicon Valley companies often take for granted. In short, the country talked about innovation, but its money went elsewhere. The obsession with real estate also influenced government policy. Tax benefits, incentives, and infrastructure planning all prioritized the housing market, while tech ecosystems remained fragmented and underfunded. The few innovation hubs that did emerge, like Sydney's Tech Central, were surrounded by sky-high rents, pricing out the very startups they aimed to support. This over-reliance on property didn't just limit funding, it created a culture where short-term gains mattered more than long-term vision. And in tech, that's a death sentence. Countries like Israel, Estonia, and Singapore embraced risk, experimentation, and long-term innovation strategies. Australia, on the other hand, chose safety. And now, that choice is catching up fast. In the next section, we'll explore how government inaction and empty promises added fuel to the fire, turning Australia's tech dream into a slow-burning disappointment. We put a lot of heart and hard work into videos like this, so if it made you think, let us know in the comments what surprised you most. And don't forget to subscribe. It's just one click, but it keeps us creating content that truly matters. Number 3. Government policy. For years, Australian leaders promised a bold future powered by technology, innovation, and startups. Catchy phrases like "smart nation" and "innovation economy" dominated speeches and press releases. On the surface, it sounded impressive. But when startups looked closer, they found something troubling: words without real support. Yes, funding programs existed. Yes, innovation grants were announced. But in reality, access was slow, complex, and frustrating. Many startups spent months buried in paperwork, only to receive minimal funding or nothing at all. For early-stage companies, time is everything, and government delays often became a death sentence. Even worse, most policies focused on short-term political wins, not long-term tech growth. While countries like Singapore and South Korea aggressively invested in AI, semiconductors, and digital infrastructure, Australia hesitated, debating regulations instead of enabling progress. Another major issue? Policy inconsistency. Startups never knew what rules would change next. Tax incentives appeared, disappeared, then reappeared in weaker forms. This uncertainty scared off global investors who prefer stable, predictable environments. Instead of acting as a launch pad, the government became a roadblock. Many founders now admit they built their companies despite government policy, not because of it. Some even relocated overseas just to escape regulatory confusion and unlock faster growth. The result was devastating. Innovation slowed, confidence dropped, and Australia lost its momentum at a critical moment in global tech history. And when government support fails, another problem quickly follows: money dries up. In the next section, we'll expose how Australia's lack of venture capital and fear of risk quietly strangled its tech ecosystem from the inside. Number 4. Lack of venture capital and risk appetite. In the startup world, capital is oxygen, and in Australia, there's simply not enough of it. Compared to global tech hubs, Australia's venture capital market is tiny. In 2022, Australian startups raised only a fraction of what was poured into companies in the US, China, or even much smaller countries like Israel. And it's not just about the amount, it's about the mindset. Australian investors have a reputation for being risk-averse. They prefer safe, steady returns from property or mining stocks over the unpredictable roller coaster of tech startups. That means many founders, even with brilliant ideas, struggle to find the funding they need, especially at the early stages when they need it most. The result? Talented entrepreneurs are forced to go overseas to raise capital. Places like Silicon Valley, London, and Singapore offer faster, larger, and more founder-friendly funding options. And once a startup moves its HQ, Australia loses not just the company, but the jobs, innovation, and economic impact that come with it. Even the VCs that do exist often play it safe, chasing late-stage deals or following trends rather than backing bold, original ideas. In contrast, other countries encourage moonshot thinking. In Australia, too many investors are waiting for someone else to go first. This lack of risk appetite has created a slow, cautious funding environment that simply doesn't match the speed of modern innovation. So, while the world races ahead in AI, blockchain, clean tech, and biotech, Australia's brightest minds are left waiting for a check that may never come. Next, we'll explore the talent crisis and why so many of Australia's top innovators are choosing to leave the country behind. 5. Brain drain. What happens when your brightest minds stop building at home and start building elsewhere? That's exactly what's been happening in Australia's tech sector. Over the last decade, thousands of skilled developers, engineers, designers, and entrepreneurs have quietly packed their bags and left the country, heading to places where opportunities are bigger, funding is easier, and innovation is truly embraced. This is what experts call brain drain, and it's hitting Australia hard. The reasons are painfully clear. With limited venture capital, slow government support, and high operating costs, many startups simply can't offer the kind of salaries, resources, or growth paths that top talent is looking for. For ambitious tech professionals, staying in Australia often means hitting a ceiling far too soon. So they leave. And they don't just go anywhere. They head to Silicon Valley, London, Berlin, Toronto, or Singapore, places where tech is thriving and talent is treated like gold. Once they're gone, they rarely come back. Even local success stories like Canva and Atlassian have had to expand most of their workforce outside Australia to scale globally, because the local talent pool simply couldn't keep up. The impact is massive. With every departure, Australia loses not just skills, but innovation, mentorship, and future startups. The ecosystem becomes weaker, and the cycle continues. Worse, universities continue producing world-class graduates, but the country fails to keep them. That's a loss no economy can afford long-term. So while the government talks about building the future, the people who could actually build it are already boarding planes. And what's making it even harder for local startups to survive? The very place they're trying to build in. Next, we'll look at how crushing regulations and endless red tape are choking innovation before it even begins.
Number 6. Crushing regulations and endless red tape. Starting a tech company is hard, but in Australia, the system makes it even harder. From complex compliance laws to painfully slow approval processes, many Australian founders say they spend more time dealing with paperwork than building their products. The red tape is everywhere, and it's choking innovation. Whether it's fintech, health tech, or AI, startups often run into outdated regulations that simply don't reflect the pace of modern technology. Instead of fast-tracking innovation, the government creates layers of bureaucracy, forcing startups to jump through hoops just to get started. Take fintech, for example. While countries like the UK introduced regulatory sandboxes to help new financial startups experiment safely, Australia's version has been too restrictive and slow to attract real innovation. Even getting licenses, approvals, or tax incentives can take months of back and forth, and that's time most startups don't have. This kind of red tape doesn't just delay progress, it kills momentum, scares off investors, and pushes companies to move where it's easier to operate. In fact, many startups have relocated their HQs or operations overseas simply to escape the maze of compliance. What's worse, there's often little consistency across states, making national expansion confusing and expensive. That's not how you build a global tech hub. In contrast, countries like Estonia have streamlined their systems, offering digital IDs, online business registrations, and lightning-fast government services to attract entrepreneurs. Australia, on the other hand, is still stuck in slow mode, and it's costing the country its competitive edge. And as we'll see in the next section, these challenges only multiply when you factor in one of the biggest issues crushing local startups, the sky-high cost of simply existing.
7. High cost of living. Let's be honest, Australia is expensive. Sydney and Melbourne regularly rank among the top 10 most expensive cities in the world. And while that might sound like a badge of honor, for startups, it's a nightmare. For early-stage companies, every dollar matters. But in Australia, just renting a small office, hiring talent, or paying basic operational costs can burn through budgets in a matter of months. Founders often find themselves spending more time worrying about cash flow than actually building their product or serving their customers. And it's not just startups feeling the squeeze. Tech talent expects higher salaries just to survive, not thrive. This makes hiring skilled developers, designers, or engineers extremely difficult, especially when international competitors can offer remote jobs with better pay and lower living costs. It's a vicious cycle. Startups struggle to pay competitive wages because of high overheads, talent leaves, the team shrinks, productivity slows, investors lose interest, the startup dies. Many promising entrepreneurs have publicly said they had no choice but to move operations offshore simply to survive. In places like Southeast Asia or Eastern Europe, the cost of running a tech startup is a fraction of what it is in Australia, with fewer barriers. Even the idea of building the next Australian unicorn becomes unrealistic when basic costs eat up runway before real traction begins. And let's not forget, the high cost of living also limits consumer spending. So even if a startup does launch locally, the market can be too small or cautious to scale quickly. Innovation needs breathing room, and in Australia's major cities, there's barely any left. Next, we'll explore why Australia never developed the kind of tech hubs that fuel collaboration, creativity, and explosive growth. 8. Lack of global tech hubs. Every successful tech nation has a central innovation engine, a place where startups, investors, talent, and big tech collide. Think Silicon Valley in the US, Shenzhen in China, or Tel Aviv in Israel. These aren't just cities, they're ecosystems designed to fuel rapid growth. Australia? It never quite built one. Yes, Sydney and Melbourne have startup scenes. Brisbane and Perth have pockets of innovation, but there's no unified, global-facing tech hub where everything connects. The result is a fragmented landscape where startups are often isolated, support is scattered, and momentum is hard to maintain. Without a concentrated tech hub, collaboration suffers. Founders don't bump into investors at coffee shops. Developers don't mingle with mentors at events. There's no critical mass of energy and talent in one place, and that's a big problem. Australia tried to fix this. Initiatives like Sydney's Tech Central were announced with great fanfare, but high rents, slow development, and poor infrastructure undermined the vision before it could come to life. Meanwhile, other countries kept building, attracting global talent, fostering cross-border partnerships, and launching tech unicorns faster than ever. The lack of a true tech hub also affects perception. When global investors think about innovation hotspots, Australia rarely makes the list. That's not because of lack of talent, it's because the ecosystem doesn't showcase that talent on a global stage. Without a thriving hub, startups struggle to scale. There's no gravitational pull to keep talent, capital, and innovation flowing in the same direction. And when the ecosystem doesn't support you, one high-profile failure can trigger a domino effect. Next, we'll explore how a string of public tech collapses shattered confidence in the entire industry.
Number 9. Failed tech giants and public blowbacks. Every growing tech scene needs its heroes, startups that scale, go public, and prove to the world that big ideas can thrive locally. In Australia, companies like Atlassian and Canva gave the world hope. But behind those rare wins, a series of high-profile failures quietly shook the foundation of trust. Take GetSwift, once a rising Aussie tech star. After going public with promises of revolutionizing delivery logistics, the company collapsed in scandal, with executives found guilty of misleading investors. Shareholders were wiped out. Public trust? Destroyed. Then came other disappointing stories, companies that overpromised, underdelivered, or simply burned through millions without results.
In a relatively small market like Australia, every failure is amplified and the fallout spreads far and wide. Investors become cautious, the media turns skeptical, and the public starts to believe that tech equals hype, not substance. Worse still, the success stories are often seen as exceptions, not the rule. So while Canva and Atlassian reached global heights, they had to scale much of their operations outside of Australia, feeding the narrative that local success still requires leaving home. This atmosphere of mistrust makes it harder for new startups to raise capital, attract talent, or gain public support. Even legitimate companies are forced to fight an uphill battle just to prove they're not another flop. And when tech founders see failure punished more than risk rewarded, they stop dreaming big. Public blowbacks don't just affect one company, they infect the entire ecosystem. Now, combine all of that with global pressure, and it's easy to see why Australia's tech edge dulled even further. In our next section, we'll examine how fierce international competition quietly pushed Australia out of the race.
Number 10. Global competition left Australia behind. While Australia was caught in red tape, funding gaps, and policy confusion, the rest of the world surged ahead. Countries like India, China, Israel, Estonia, and Singapore doubled down on tech, investing billions into AI, cybersecurity, clean energy, blockchain, and biotech. They moved fast, removed barriers, and created ecosystems that rewarded bold innovation. Australia? It hesitated, it debated, it regulated, and in that delay, it got left behind. Let's take India, for example. With its booming developer base and aggressive government-backed programs like Digital India and Startup India, the country has produced over 100 unicorns in under a decade. Singapore created one of the most startup-friendly environments on Earth, attracting global VCs and multinationals with tax breaks, talent visas, and pro-tech laws. Even smaller nations like Estonia, with just 1.3 million people, have become global leaders in digital governance, attracting entrepreneurs from around the world. Meanwhile, Australia struggled to even define its innovation strategy. Global companies took note. When tech giants looked to expand, they often skipped over Australia, choosing larger, faster-moving markets in Asia and Europe. Some didn't even consider Australia a strategic priority at all. That's a dangerous place to be. Because in the tech world, competition isn't local, it's global. And the moment a country stops adapting, it starts falling behind. The worst part? Australian talent, ideas, and potential are world-class. But when the system can't keep up, others will gladly take the lead. And just when the country needed a breakthrough the most, the world was hit by something that made things even worse. In the next section, we explore the final blow that sent Australia's tech dream into a tailspin: COVID-19. Australia had the talent, it had the ideas, it even had global success stories like Canva and Atlassian proving what was possible. But somewhere along the way, the system failed the dream. From funding gaps and brain drain to outdated policies and a lack of real tech hubs, the country slowly lost its place in the global innovation race. The collapse of Australia's tech empire isn't just a business story, it's a cautionary tale for every nation trying to build a future economy. Because without vision, risk, and real support, even the brightest ideas can't survive. But here's the truth, it's not too late. In the next 60 seconds, let's talk about how Australia can still turn this around and what it would take to rebuild a stronger, smarter, and truly future-ready tech ecosystem. The collapse may be real, but it's not irreversible. Australia has all the raw ingredients for a thriving tech economy: world-class universities, highly skilled talent, strong infrastructure,
and a strategic location in the Asia-Pacific. What it needs now is bold, coordinated action. First, the government must streamline regulations and cut the red tape choking startups. This includes faster approvals, modernized laws for fintech and AI, and consistent national tech policies. Second, there must be greater investment in early-stage startups, not just from VCs, but through public-private partnerships, grants, and angel networks. Risk needs to be seen as opportunity, not liability. Third, building tech hubs that actually function with affordable spaces, high-speed infrastructure, and community programs is essential to keeping innovation local and scalable. Finally, Australia must attract and retain talent, offering incentives for skilled workers and returning expats, while celebrating and showcasing homegrown success. The dream isn't dead, but without urgent action, it soon will be. If you made it this far, you're one of the few who truly cares about the future of innovation, and we want to hear from you. Do you think Australia can still reclaim its tech dream? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. And if you found this video eye-opening, check out our last one. It's packed with insights you won't want to miss. We pour hours into every episode to bring you real stories that matter. So please support us with a quick subscribe. It's just one click, but it means everything to us.